And thank you to everyone for joining us from all over the place. I'm sure we'll have a few more joining us as time goes on. If I can ask you to keep your mic muted and cameras on or off as you prefer. And if you ask any questions in the chat, let me see, we have a Q&A and a chat. So maybe if we can ask everyone to just post in the chat, that would be easier. So I only have to look at one place. So if you have any questions, please do post in the chat and I will pick them up from there, here and there. And if you could try and be as concise as possible. Thank you. Thanks, Thilina. So quickly, to give you a quick update on the state of the conference. So we are at full capacity and we have about 120 people attending, including organizers and speakers and everything. And space is limited by fire regulations and the size of the venue and things. We had perhaps double that number of applications, and we appreciate, of course, that not everyone can fit in. And we're very sorry about that, but we have a waiting list and we will be contacting people in order if there's any cancellations. We have about 70 people on the waiting list though, so we will contact you in order of registration. We had about 100 abstracts submitted for initially 10 spots. We've increased that to 16, so we now have 16 speakers. And also there are 4 working groups, as you know, which will be starting up now. And so we're looking forward to welcoming everyone in November. So that's the housekeeping out the way. If I could now ask our 4 speakers to very briefly, in just 30 seconds, to introduce themselves. I think that would be most efficient. So Motoko, can I ask you to very quickly?
Yes. Hello, my name is Motoko Okumoto. I'm head of CoSTEP. CoSTEP is one of Japanese science communication program and department. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. And Jen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jen Martin. I'm an associate professor in the Faculty of Science at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and I founded and lead a science communication teaching program there.
Thank you. Matt.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name's Matt Wood. I'm currently transitioning between jobs, so I have to get used to a different kind of introduction. I'm moving between the University of Tsukuba in Japan to Queensland University of Technology in Australia. But today I'll be talking about, or mainly talking about, our science communication program at the University of Tsukuba.
Thank you. And Thilina.
Thanks, Yuan. And Matt, of course, we are sorry to have you leave Japan. So hi everyone. I'm Thilina. I work at Earth Life Science Institute. That we are focused on astrobiology and science communication, and I'm also part of the symposium that's been held in November through the Japan SciComm Forum.
Thank you. And I should briefly introduce myself, I guess. I'm at Nagoya University and I organize the JSF Socials, these online events, and I'm part of the organizing committee as well with Thilina for JSF 2025. Okay, so let's get straight into this then. So first, I think we should have a quick introduction to JSF and PCST. So Thilina, the community, JSF community was established in 2018, I believe, to address partly problems of people being isolated in work and needing access to education and training. Can you give us a very short introduction to JSF?
Yes, happy to. So, of course, those who know, in Japan, there are quite a few science communication groups, and some of them are actually quite old. And but there's always been a need to sort of network the science communicators that work in English in Japan. And even though the both languages share some similar challenges, there are actually language-specific challenges also. And so in this, together with these kind of challenges, the first sort of gathering happened in 2018 at our institute, and so it's actually coming back a full cycle back to our institute after about 7 years. And so the primary sort of focus of JSF started with like having no venue for people doing science communication English to sort of meet and discuss, to sort of like a full-blown conference and in between webinars, and it's all done by a really small team. But the team, which is nice, is that the team kind of stays. Half of the team stays, then half of the teams changes every year, depending on like the host of the conference and so on. Yeah, so it has become sort of a venue and a community for science communicators in Japan. Although in the recent years we have more in the region joining, and which we didn't even expect and wasn't even in the plan. And that's something we are still working on, how to navigate like having all these people from other regions coming in and keeping still focus relevant to Japan and also the people who are coming in. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And this JSF event each year, we have the annual symposium, of course, is also organized with PCST this time. Can you give us a very brief rundown on what PCST is in maybe a minute?
Yes, definitely. So PCST is actually the largest science communication organization network in the world. And it's actually quite nice to be part of, where there are multiple committees, multiple working groups focus on various aspects of science communication. And PCST hosts annual every other year a big conference, like 500, 700 people, depending on the year. And then in between these conferences, you have the symposium, which is focused on the region. Or it can be like a region, or it can be like a theme. And the last one took place in China last year. And then so this year we have the PCST symposium bringing into Japan, and that JSF is actually hosting. And it's a really nice way for both parties, like for JSF in Japan to bring PCST, and also PCST to come to Japan for the first time. Yeah, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so that's a bit of background. This time, if I can also just stay with Thilina for another minute or two. So this time we have two themes for the symposium, and the first one is education and training, the second one science and society, and then each of those is split into two separate working groups. Thilina, can you give us a quick overview of the purpose and thinking behind this?
Yes. So the JSF has been running for about 6-7 years now, and every year, whenever we do like either like a webinar, which is called socials, or the conference, or even a smaller gathering, we always end up with like these questions and challenges from our community. And we also had an intern about more than a year ago that actually looked at all the feedback and all the discussion points from multiple years from various sources, looking at different challenges. And in the past, we actually haven't addressed these challenges directly through our conferences, because the conference we kept a bit more general, and every year we change the topics we address. And this is the first time we actually focus a bit more long-term views and challenges, and how to actually solve together some of the things in Japan and also for Asia as a community. So while thinking about this, we sort of narrow it down to, okay, let's focus on two core themes. One is on education and training, and also it's sort of like asking a question. So education and training, we ask, how can we establish formal and informal education and training programs in Asia to professionalize science communication? And this professionalization is the key word here, because those who work in science communication knows that the struggle, even if you are been sort of working for many years, there's a little bit of challenge with recognition. and it's not up to the standard, oh, you have a background in physics, or you have a background in arts. And so that's sort of the theme one there that we are focused on. And then the theme 2 is actually science and society. The question we ask is, how can we bridge the gap between science communication research and practice, and help get these two to sort of help with wider audience. And this is actually not just for Japan or Asia, it's very common across science communication around the world, where that practitioners and researchers do things very separated, and very only in certain unique cases we have seen, like you have people who are doing practice and then evaluating and sort of doing research based on that. And so these sort of like doing certain things independently created like more complications in the pipeline of things. And so that's sort of also what we are trying to accomplish by looking at these through the core themes.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned there's this gap between practitioners and researchers as kind of a global issue. Are there any specific issues that you want to address that are really relevant to Asia?
Yes, I think one of them is actually that we have, and it's also timely. I'll explain in very briefly. So one example is actually we have some of the, especially Japan is quite well known for having really nicely done frameworks and visions, and from the government level and from the university top. And I think some of the planning we have in document is actually quite nice, the vision in documents. And it's also very forward thinking. And some of the things, even if you read something from Japan, the ministry like 10 years ago, it's actually really far ahead thinking. However, in practice, to implement these, we lack a lot of skills at various levels. So a lot of the times these ideas just stay on papers. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to find sort of how can we sort of achieve these sort of like visioning ideas and bringing both this research and practice together. And while doing that, to make sure that this work is sort of seen as professional science communication work. That's sort of like the idea. And it's very quickly, this is timely because historically, we haven't had many big science communication activities in Asia. But these 5 years, starting from last year, for the next 5 years, there's going to be 4 big conferences and 3 symposia in Japan, in Asia, and some of them are PCST related, some of them are like from other networks. So there's going to be a lot of activities in Asia in these 5 years. So it's a really good time to sort of come together, like local networks and regional networks, to sort of address some of these key issues, and also like eventually to get the attention of like top government level to change, like really take this into serious thinking. Yeah.
Right, thank you. So I think, yeah, I mean, that, as you said at the beginning as well, this event has been a moment where JSF has really started to connect a lot more with the rest of Asia, and that's really interesting and exciting. Okay, so let's get a bit into theme 1 then, the topic, so education and training. Jen, if I can go to you and ask, what do you think, you've got a lot of experience in setting up new programs. What's the most common barriers you see to establishing formal science communication programs in universities? Because as Thilina has just said, this is Japan, for example, has a lot of planning, but not necessarily quite so much implementation.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ewan, and that's really exciting to hear Thilina's take on things. It's I feel really honoured to have the opportunity to be involved in this symposium, because it seems like such a critical time to be harnessing this energy and enthusiasm and commitment and expertise for building science communication education. In terms of the barriers, I feel like there's going to be different barriers in all different places, and I don't pretend to be able to speak for a moment for other places, nor particularly for Japan or Asia. I guess I can just reflect on my experiences. So I first started wanting to create science communication education opportunities at the University of Melbourne in about 2010, so 15 years ago. And I think to some extent the barriers that were true then are still true now, which is very frustrating, right? I mean, I think there's the obvious things like resourcing, capacity, money. Those things are going to be probably true in most places. There has to be somebody who is in control of those things, money and resources, who sees the need for this and is willing to stand up for that. But I still think, even though it's definitely better in the last 15 years, aside from many of those kind of practical things, I think a lot of it is just about appetite and people's willingness to understand that this stuff is important. So my own little story was that my own PhD led me to this very personal realization that it was crazy that what I'd found out during my PhD, I didn't see the value in communicating that in academic papers and at academic conferences. I mean, yes, there was value in that, sure, to build my academic track record and to create these scholarly outputs. And of course, I did those things. But what my PhD showed me was that I also needed to be able to communicate the findings to a whole lot of other stakeholders, farmers, land managers. So I'm an ecologist by training. And despite 10 years of tertiary study, 2 undergraduate degrees, an honours degree and a PhD, no one had ever talked to me about how to communicate effectively technical ideas to non-technical audiences. So my drive came from this very personal place of real misery and frustration that I didn't have those skills. But when I first started being the person in the room saying, excuse me, why don't we train our science students in communication skills? The answer I got over and over again from different people was, you don't have to teach that stuff. They just pick it up by osmosis. Now, for anyone in the room who understands how osmosis works, which I'm guessing is all of us, you know, it's a passive process and it aligns in no way with skill development. So I think one of the barriers is people recognizing that science communication is a discipline. It is a strong discipline. It is a discipline that is growing all the time. There are experts all over the world who can help us communicate, you know, more effectively. And there is an evidence base here. But I feel like there's a lot of people who just don't recognize that. So the barrier is this recognition. And I feel like this barrier sometimes comes from students as well. So a lot of my teaching is at postgraduate level. And at postgraduate level, a lot of students will say, oh my gosh, this is the most useful subject I've ever done. Why didn't I get to study it at undergrad level? And if they were a Melbourne Uni local student, my answer is, well, you could have. We also teach this at undergrad level. And their response is always, yeah, but as an undergrad, I didn't realise that I was here to learn skills. I thought I was here to learn content, science content. So I feel like there's multiple layers of change, you know, that is needed for people to recognise the huge value of communication. So I guess I'll stop in a second, but just one more piece of the puzzle, which I think is important to clarify here. So I don't run a science communication degree. You can't come out of Melbourne Uni with a degree in science communication. What I have always done and what I've always believed is more impactful is we try and make sure every science student in every discipline gets some communication training. So it's a slightly different model to certainly all the other universities in Australia. And so it's about the students and the staff and at all levels recognising that if you want to make a difference in the world, if you want your science to have impact, if you want to be able to interact with different people, you're going to need to work on your communication skills so you don't sound like an academic. And that is the real barrier, I think, people believing that communication training has an essential place in any sort of science training. And I feel like once that strong commitment and belief is there, then you can kind of sort out the other more logistical things like money and resourcing and that sort of stuff. And I do think it's got better over those 15 years, but I don't think it's completely there. I still have to pull out data to convince people, look, the number one skill that employers are looking for, it's not technical skills, it's communication skills. And sometimes people still don't believe me on that. So I think there's definitely more work to do.
Thank you. That's encouraging in a way that we're obviously facing many of the same basic challenge here in Japan as well. It's just convincing people that this is actually something that we need to do. But it's also kind of discouraging that it's still that we're at that point where we still need to have that conversation every time. But but I think we're definitely, as you say, I feel also the situation in Japan has changed a lot in the last few years too, where now science communication is seen increasingly as an important skill that people need. It's increasingly taught in programs, and increasingly there are professional science communicators in universities. Hence our JSF has become an important organization for them too. Motoko, if I can go to you. So
Yes.
CoSTEP is, I think, perhaps the most successful science communication education program in Japan. You've been around for a long time, 20 years now, I believe. What do you see as any particular problems facing science communication and education in Japan? And what do you think has been sort of key to CoSTEP surviving for so long?
Thank you very much. And yes, we have some key point to survive in Japan as a science communication organization, I think. However, I will introduce 2 points today. One is that our science communication program open for society, not only in university. So it is a very unique point. In our program, there are Hokkaido University students and also outside of Hokkaido universities. So this is very unique educational environment, I think. So for university student, it's a good opportunity to learn social and to learn with social people, and also for social public people. Also, it's important opportunity to learn academic students' situations and academic backgrounds. So such type of uniqueness is our strong point, I think. So it's a difference from other universities program in Japan. And the second point is our network, our teamwork. I think science communication is a very wide range activity. So maybe our staff is not only one charismatic person to educate science communication, but our team has a very different background and a different type of skills. So we think such teamwork education program is key point to our successful, I think. However, such teamwork situation is difficult to be keep on. We needed a big financial aid for keeping such our team. So recently, we think it is time to make a more different network to keep on such our teams, because yes, not only academic one, but also not academic teamwork also, because science communication recently, science communication will be expanded for non-academic fields like business field or local government fields, I think. So we try to make a network with our local organization, and also try to make network with profit side, non-academic side. And also we need to make other organization of science communication in Japan to keep on our educational program. So, however, it is that start point. So I just idea to but I think such new network can be supported for our science communication program, I think.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think, as you say, teamwork, having a large team that manages the program, I mean, obviously that requires capacity, requires resources to maintain, but it gives you a kind of permanence and stability, which is great and is lacking in a lot of programs in Japan. And also the idea of building out your networks to other groups, to companies, to local organizations, local authorities, government. I think that's a fantastic model. And I guess, I mean, most of the science communication training programs I'm aware of tend to be focused very internally, right? It's about training the students, but also looking out to society. And as you say, you already have members of society taking your programs. I think that's a really, really good model. If I can go to Matt now and ask, so at Tsukuba, you had experience setting up a program for science communication there. And also, as you just mentioned, you've moved on now to, or are moving on to Australia, to another university. So what are the main challenges do you think you faced setting up your program? And then how do you think universities or institutions to build in some continuity there? Because I have a feeling you're going to, your situation is a little bit different to CoSTEP.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to be echoing a lot of the same ideas, but just in slightly different words, I guess. But just I think probably some people who are listening are maybe not familiar with the type of certificate program that we offer here. So in 2022, we launched a certificate program in science communication, and that's not a standalone certificate. So what it is students who are already enrolled in a master's or a PhD program at this university in any faculty can enroll in the certificate program and complete some extra credits. And then when they graduate with their master's or PhD, they get an additional certificate in science communication. It's a really nice way that we can recognize the work that students have done in science communication. And for many, many years, I've been here. I had been here, was here. I'm not sure of the tense at the moment, but I'm confused. I've been at the University of Tsukuba for about 16 years, and pretty much the entire time was pushing to do something in science communication. We already had courses that were building communication skills and teaching or training students in theoretical aspects of science communication. And I wanted to have that recognized formally by the university, because at that time when they graduated, it was just a course number with a kind of nondescript title on their transcript, and it really didn't get recognized very well. So we managed to launch this certificate finally in 2022. The challenges, similar to the speakers who've come before me, resources. I'm going to say buy-in. I'll word it a little bit differently, but getting buy-in from the institute, but also instructors who are going to be involved in delivering the program. So that that includes funding, of course. Funding's important, but I could see that there was a lot that we could do without very much money. In fact, in the end, we've launched this certificate program with almost no funding at all. But you need cooperation from the people who are going to be instructing. We would like to have more personnel, more staff involved in this, but that goes back to funding, I guess. Yeah, so we were pushing this for many, many years, and people would say, yes, that seems like a good idea. Yes, science communication is important, but we never really got very far. But I guess we were taking a kind of a bottom-up approach to initiate it, but we still needed that administration level recognition and support. That finally came when the university decided that they wanted to develop more of these certificate programs. So once they had that interest, we already had plans and proposals in place that we'd been pushing for years. So we were able to swoop on the opportunity and get the program set up. So I guess the lesson to be learned there was, timing is very important, and to be ready to go when the opportunity comes up. That kind of was fortuitous for us, but that's the way that it worked out. Yes, for continuity, lessons learned from other programs, and we'll see what happens with this one. But an overdependence on key staff tends to be a key weakness in programs that have not continued all around the world, that I've noticed. So yeah, taking like spreading your focus as broad as possible in a number of different ways. So firstly, spreading the responsibilities and tasks across a number of key staff would be a very good strategy, I think. But also, as Motoko mentioned, they offer at CoSTEP offers courses outside of the university, so that broad focus on your target students, I think is probably important as well. Also, your funding arrangements, having a broad focus on your funding arrangements, basically just not being too over dependent on staff that run the program, students who are interested in the program, and funders who are paying for the program, I think would probably be a good approach. And continuity, we're yet to see how well we do on this, but I think having documented, regulated processes that you can pass on to new staff as they come in. I also think what I've been trying to do more of, sorry if I can just take another minute or two, another point that I think is really important in this particular context, given the lack of resources that most of us are faced with, I think moving forward, if we can focus on like inter-university cooperations or cooperations with industry, perhaps, looking at ways that we can share our limited resources to reach more students and not be bound by, university boundaries. We've started working on that at the University of Tsukuba with, collaborative arrangements with other universities. It's something that we hope to build on in the future. Taking the view that we're not going to be given a bucket of money to run our program anytime soon. And given that other people are in similar situations, perhaps we can cooperate. One really nice piece of news that we've had recently that I hope will work in our favour is that we've been endorsed by UNESCO under their Decade for Sustainable, let me get this right, Decade for Science for Sustainable Development. So they've recognised that what we're doing here is important to achieve the goals of that UNESCO program, and they've endorsed us. I'm hoping that we can leverage that to make some things happen with our program in the future.
Wonderful, thank you. A lot in there, I think. Particularly, no, not interesting. So I think that being endorsed by UNESCO is fantastic news, and Japanese universities, I'm assuming this is possibly similar for other universities too around the world too, is a weakness for external author validation or ideas. And So often Japanese universities, when they start a program, they're looking at, okay, what are Western universities particularly doing is often where they look first. So having this kind of external validation for a program, I think, is incredibly powerful. Also, my day job is in the International Strategy Office at the university, and I've also found one thing. You said that your program took off when university decided that they wanted to increase the number of these sorts of certificates. I've always found it at the universities I've worked at, if you can match your programs to institutional goals, then you're going to get there a lot quicker. So knowing what else is going on in the university and then being able to package what you're doing to match to that, to fit to that, is always going to be a quicker way to achieve things. The downside of that, of course, is that university programs and goals change over time. So you've got to be able to ride that out too. Thank you. So I think we should move on a little bit more to the content of the a little bit more focus on the content of the theme. So if I can ask Thilina again, one of the sort of aspects of this conference is that it's an Asian science communication conference. And one of the things that I think you've been talking about as well is this idea of non-Western models of science communication, not being just copying what Western universities are doing. So we're looking for sort of non-Western local perspectives on science communication. Can you talk a little bit about that and how we can identify and incorporate these sorts of approaches into education programs?
Yes, definitely. I think that's the core of the symposium is, even though we have this big two themes, is actually look at some non-Western perspectives. And so science communication isn't really culturally neutral, and how people interpret questions and trust, engage with science is very deeply embedded in local knowledges, values, and how you're brought up, and history, and also very importantly language. And I experienced this myself because growing up in Sri Lanka and then moving to Europe and spend most of my adult life in Europe, there's always sort of these things that I identified, like how I perceive certain scientific understanding and how I also communicate scientific understanding can be confusing, and sometimes that also doesn't really stream very similar in the way that you're expected to sort of communicate. And then also many of the science communication education programs are developed looking at Western Anglophone context and looking at this, how certain model frameworks and models work. And it really works if you are a first language English speaker, and it's very easy to sort of integrate these how you were brought up. But if you sort of import these models wholesale, it can lead to mismatches and misunderstanding, and even to the point excluding local publics. And so I think these are sort of the key rationale. So we wanted to have a symposium focusing on non-Western perspectives, but do it together with people around the world, not just people from Asia, invite people from Europe and Jen from Australia, and we have some people coming from Middle East and Europe and Africa. So and even within our region, it's very diverse as like any other region. So it's a sort of to look at how can we sort of make science communication a bit more adaptable to depending on where you come from and how you communicate and so on. And this, so having all these multiple sort of parties coming from different backgrounds, who are experts in their own way, helps to sort of look at what are the challenges we have, how do we sort of bring language, translation, metaphors into practice. And when you sort of evaluate, and I'm always sort of, whenever I see in recent times, we have all these like global scale studies done. And sometimes global scale studies are great to get an sort of a understanding where things are, but we are still putting a sort of like a standard saying this is a standard somewhere else that actually really works. And it doesn't match what's going on in Japan, and it looks quite bad. But in reality, maybe Japan has a different perspective and different way of actually has achieved. It just doesn't fit in that model. And so I think this is sort of like a core we wanted to have a conversation, and also very quickly, for those who are not aware, the symposium is not really based on giving lectures and talks as you would see in a normal conference. And it's mostly driven by working groups, like discussions, and like focus on these themes and trying to find solutions and providing like recommendations for the future. So these are the sort of like non-Western models that we want to focus on. I like myself, and I'm sure Yuan and all the organizers, we actually don't know what will be the outcome yet. So it's all, we are still trying to figure out along the way. And just as all the participants, we are curious like how it's going to go. And we are excited, but also we are curious at the same time.
Thank you. Okay, I'm mindful that we want to keep a few minutes at the end for questions from our audience. But before that, just I would like, I've mentioned to our speakers that I would like everyone to give us one sort of concrete action item that institutions could immediately do to advance communication education. I wonder if I could also ask you, while you're answering that, to also think a little bit about what Thilina just said. What is there something that's sort of local or relevant to your context that you think is maybe a little bit different to the global standard, or the Western standard, I guess, is what we're talking about. So yeah, so what do you think you could do, what institutions do, one sort of concrete thing that could be done to advance science communication education? So Jen, can I go to you first?
You can, Ewan, but I have to say I found this question actually quite difficult to answer in terms of trying to, I mean, for me, and this probably doesn't fit the bill of being concrete, but I guess what I want is for institutions to pay more attention to the world in which our students live, and to think more carefully about what our job is as educators and what they're going to need, because I feel like there's still a lot of kind of historic sense of what a university degree is about that is ignoring the world that our students are going out into. And it is simply crazy to me that somebody would leave a university with a Bachelor of Science or a Master of Science or a PhD without having been taught how they're going to communicate their ideas to different audiences, because I can't think of any job in STEM that doesn't involve communication. So I know that's not really a concrete step, but I just think paying better attention to how we serve our students and give them what they need. And I guess in the Australian context, and perhaps this is true for everybody, I don't know, but in the Australian context, it's really thinking about how we can give our students real world experiences that they can draw on in job applications and job interviews and those sort of things, because the reality is very few of our students are going to end up in academia. The crazy funneling that goes from the number of undergrads, masters, PhD to the number of academic jobs, the vast majority of our students are going to end up out in other jobs in STEM, and the limiting factor for them is real world workplace experience. So the more we can provide them with internship and other opportunities to have things to talk about when they're applying for jobs, the better.
Wonderful, thank you. Motoko, can I ask you next?
Yes, I like to talk about different side of Asian uniqueness. Recently, some Asian students contacted me to want to learn science communication in Japan, and most of them very interested in Japanese popular culture, like animation or game. It is quite important aspect for science communication in Asia, I think. Sometimes, yes, such popular culture stuff is difficult to involve in academic science communication program. However, we recently try to invite some lecturer for such a field as a very short time lecturer. So, but we want to make a trigger to understand this popular culture's skill for science communication. Such different culture in Asia is a very strong point and uniqueness for science communication, I think.
Yes, thank you. So I'm also aware that in Japan, there's also been quite a few manga and anime that are picking up on scientific topics that are hugely instructive and informative for a very broad audience. So I think it's, as you say, it's an essential thing we should be paying attention to. Matt, can I very briefly ask you for a comment?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, I see universities, the role of universities as being leaders of society, not just educators, but we should be molding and modeling the future societies that we're aiming for. So that's, just put a pin in that for a moment. One of the challenge, going back to the challenges that you asked me about, like quite often when I've talked to people about starting science communication programs, the response is very quickly turns to, well, you know, there's no jobs for science communicators, so why should we do that? But that's missing the point, right? That there's no job titles science communicator, but the skills that you develop are necessary in a whole range of jobs and employment. So bringing those two things together, we should be leading the way as universities and employing people who have science communication skills, whether that's, you know, public information officers working as science communicators, or research administrators with science communication skills, or researchers and academics with science communication skills. And they could be written into the selection criteria for new positions. And that would demonstrate that we think this is important. We think this is the way forward. And we'd also be creating a need for the education programs to develop personnel with those skills to fill the position. So I think that would be a pretty amazing thing that we could do to drive, you know, science communication forward very broadly.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to remind everyone, if you have any questions, do please post them in the chat. And we have just about 12 minutes left. Thilina, do you want to comment also on any sort of concrete immediate actions you can see very, very briefly?
Yes, I think I'm really tired of actually having to train same people or new people every single year. And because we don't have a system that in universities, that especially the staff level, that you train somebody for a couple of years and then they have to leave somewhere else to a different department, and there's no continuation. So it's a very sort of a loosely planned way of long-term thinking. And what I would like to do is actually to make science communications from like something like extra to bring it to mandate, either for admin or staff level or faculty or students. And it's gone into this like extra thing for forever. And I think that's the main struggle, to bring from extra to like mandatory core component of the university.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have one comment from Ramsey. I think, so you're saying that professionalization doesn't quite match what we're talking about. I think, though, there's sort of multiple threads to what we're talking about here. One is the bringing in alternative, different viewpoints and perspectives and models. Another is creating a professional communication sort of standard for professional training for communicators in Japan. And the other is separately to the general providing some kind of basic science communication training for scientists as a whole. So I think there's sort of multiple aspects there to that. If anyone does have any questions, please can you either write or raise a hand if you would like to. Oh, there we go. So Andrea, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read that out? You can ask it if you wish to put on your mic. There is. Shall I? I'll take it then. So thank you. Working as science communication. Okay, that's fine. Sorry. Working as science communication officer in South Korea. As a one-person team, I noticed the students here have not heard of science communication. I wonder how we can bring more attention to the discipline, not only at universities, but institutes as well. Even though some students, those students are connected to universities, they spend most of their time and learning process at the institutes. Any particular advice on this? Anyone want to offer a response to that?
Yes. Yes. In our case, CoSTEP can get introduction time in postgraduate guidance. So every postgraduate understand the CoSTEP program before start to their program. So such type of introduction is very important, we think.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Jen, do you have any suggestions there?
I mean, I guess it's just part of this whole culture shift that we're looking for, isn't it? I don't know the simple answer. If the students are spending time in institutes where science communication is not on the radar, it's you know, we're looking for incremental changes. So just as the conversation with Matt was about what happens to a program where the key driver is moving country, I feel like one person can make a really big difference. Is there someone at these institutes who sees the value of this training and understands the importance of sharing work more broadly? One person, I think, can absolutely bring about a culture change. So I think it's about finding allies. That's something I didn't really speak to very effectively earlier, but for me, it's been really important to find even just one or two key allies who've helped me bring about massive culture change at my university. So my suggestion would be find even just one ally at each of these institutes who are, as Matt said, who have buy-in to this message, and see where you can go from there.
Thank you. And I think definitely that also ties into what we were sort of talking about earlier, about sort of aligning with institutional goals and things, finding what your university is up to, institute is up to, and trying to align with that. So then that makes it easier to access resources and gain support. And thank you. So another question, how can we assure that when we bring in local or non-Western perspectives, like folk theatre in India or manga in Japan, we're not tokenizing them, but truly integrating them into education programs? Thilina, do you want to have a stab at that, or anyone else that?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and if anyone else. And definitely there's a risk on this aspect. I think anything you do in progress and trying to develop and progress, there could be downfalls, and that's very unavoidable. That you have to be very realistic, because not everything we do is going to actually work out. Maybe I would be happy even in like 30% of what we are doing actually works out, because you only need that much of things actually working out. And I think it's our duty to actually recognize these challenges as we develop and also keep addressing them. And that's why a lot of the things actually both all the other panelists also mentioned, like repeatedly recognizing like key people, allies, and which all means like having a community around you, right?
Yeah.
And the things you don't see will be seen by someone else, and that's sort of, I think, we can avoid, or not avoid, like recognize the things didn't work and things that are not working, and sort of not go in the direction of as a checkbox or a tokenism.
Yeah. Jen, do you have any experience on this from sort of the Australian context with First Nations and all, or is that not really relevant at this moment?
Sorry, it didn't want to let me unmute there for a second. No, it's super relevant, and as a white person in Australia, it's something that I really think about a lot and agonize over, to be perfectly honest, because I'm such a deep believer in the importance of diversity and inclusivity. My whole drive to teach communication is around trying to make science a more inclusive practice. And by definition, I think we can't solve any of the world's problems without working together in diverse teams. But there's such a risk in Australia where we want to showcase First Nations voices and we want to highlight First Nations knowledge, but it's so hard not to feel like you're constantly kind of picking on the same people who are already at capacity and saying, we really want you to be part of this because we want to demonstrate that we care. And they're like, yeah, but I don't have capacity to do more than I'm already doing. And I really take heart from Thilina's comment that maybe it's okay if it only works well 30% of the time, because I feel like I have these ridiculous high standards that I just constantly feel like I'm failing by not lifting up other people's voices nearly as much as I think I should as a privileged white person. So I think it's really hard, and maybe that's the right approach, that we go into these things with kindness and goodness in our hearts and try and do the best we can, and accept that we're not always going to be able to do best practice. And I guess the main thing is listening, asking questions and listening, and trying to be sensitive to different people's viewpoints.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really important message, and something to kind of a good final word actually for this webinar so far, is that we should go in with kindness in our hearts and try and do the best that we can, and of course try and include as many voices as possible. We have just 2 minutes or so left. Matt, you just raised your hand there. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm sorry if you were trying to wrap up there and you said that was the final word, and now I'm saying something else. I was just thinking more generally from a pedagogical kind of perspective, and thinking about inclusive education more broadly. I think it's helpful to look at your students, or to consider your students as resources for your course as well, and see how you can include their ideas and opinions and experiences and backgrounds as part of your course. Now, I recognize that that's not always possible, and you need some flexibility in your courses and in your teaching. But if you have kind of discussion-based courses, it's, think about ways that you can draw from student experiences to enrich the content of your course, rather than you just trying to tell them how it is all the time. I find that makes courses a lot more interesting if you can manage to do it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you. I guess then also that's also about in making sure that we're engaging with lots of different stakeholders in our program. So as Motoko also said, engaging with society, getting students from society as well into their programs is increasing the diversity of voices there. And then also running those programs together with the students, of course, making them part of or have given them agency to sort of affect the programs too is important. Really, we are at the end now, so I think I will wrap up very quickly. There was one question. So there has been a huge amount of interest in the Tokyo Symposium, but we know we haven't been able to offer everyone a place. But there are other events coming up. So in Dubai in 2026, in February, there will be a pro event. And also in Berlin 2026 later in the year, and then Shanghai will be in 2027, I believe in May, but I'm not sure about that. So you can find information about those from the PCST website if they're PCST events. Otherwise, if you're on the JSF mailing list, we will also post information there. I would just like to wrap up quickly now since it's 12 and thank you to our speakers for their attendance and for their wonderful comments. I'd like to remind you the next webinar will be October 16th. That might change a little depending on speakers' availability, and that will cover theme 2, Science and Society. So please do register from the homepage when those links are added. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Jen and Motoko and Matt and Thilina, and we will see you again next month. Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you to our audience for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.